about, I would say, maybe a week and a half ago, my friend Late Films gave me a video idea to do on this channel, which is comparing old Lucasfilm with new Lucasfilm. And, because if you don't know, if you're living under a rock, Star Wars is owned by Disney now, so there's differences between the two eras of the entire franchise. And I thank you, Late Films, for this idea, because it is a good idea to actually compare, because that got me thinking about the differences between the two eras. The first thing I want to talk about is the content itself. And if you look at old Lucasfilm, from the very moment Star Wars began to 2012, there have been a total of 7 Star Wars films, and which was the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and the 2008 Clone Wars animated movie. Under Disney, we had 5 films: the sequel trilogy, Rogue One, Solo. But a difference between the two is shows. During the old Lucasfilm, the shows weren't that common. Yeah, you had the 2008 Clone Wars show, and also 2003 one. But other than that, not really. I mean, you had like this 90s show called Droids and stuff like that. But in terms of shows, there weren't really that much compared to now, where there's a crap ton of it. Starting in 2014 with Rebels, and then with all the Disney Plus shows, with The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, and all the Disney Plus shows that are being released in the next couple years. There's a lot. There's actually more Star Wars shows than films that are going to be coming out, because you have Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, The Bad Batch, you're going to have the Ahsoka series, you're going to have the Obi-Wan show, Andor, that's 6. Also this Droids show, there's a Lando show coming out. But a lot of these shows are more event shows where they're not multiple seasons, they're only like a couple episodes, and that's basically like the Obi-Wan show is only 6 1-hour episodes. So it's not like it's going to be multiple seasons thing. Back in old Lucasfilm, everything was, in terms of the films and shows, George Lucas had some sort of hand in it. Some sort. That made them authentic. But, this also gets to my next point, when it goes to the authenticity of what Star Wars is. Because, are you someone that likes Star Wars that George Lucas made, or are you someone that likes Star Wars that's made by another person? Because new Lucasfilm, Disney Star Wars, is made by different people. Almost every project is made by someone different. No, yeah, the 2003 Clone Wars show was not made by George Lucas, but he did get a hand in terms of the character. Like, for example, General Grievous was introduced in the 2003 Clone Wars show because George Lucas gave, the creator of that show, the design of it, and stuff like that. Pretty much working together to create this branch into Revenge of the Sith that was coming out around that time. So in terms of the actual content itself, it is different. And with the Book of Boba Fett being released, there's mixed reactions to it. Some people like it, some people don't like it. When I looked at the Book of Boba Fett, I looked at a couple reviews of it, and some of the aliens do not look Star Wars. I'm like, this does not look like a Star Wars costume or an alien. It looks like Star Trek. And the shows, Disney Plus shows, I understand Disney Plus shows don't have that much budget. They're not a movie. But they look like Star Trek. They honestly do. When I looked at The Mandalorian for the first time, I'm like, is this Star Trek? This looks like Star Trek. And with old Lucasfilm, you don't get that. It looks like you're in the galaxy, you're immersed in it. It's different from anything else. Now, I understand, Disney Plus show, the budget is a lot lower, so I do excuse it now. And as time goes on, I feel like they are going to improve the CGI, which they already did. I mean, the Book of Boba Fett, you have, people who relate to Jabba. Well, not people, slugs that relate to Jabba, and the CGI looks really good, honestly. It still looks kind of fake, but it looks a lot better than what originally Jabba looked like when he was in CGI in 1997. Another thing to compare is the canonization of content. Because back in the old Lucasfilm, this is something that I kind of forgot, because I'm so used to Disney Star Wars. Back in old Lucasfilm, not everything was canonized. So, the shows, some of the shows were not canonized. Like the 2003 Clone Wars show is not canon once the 2008 Clone Wars started. So there were also like 2 Ewok films and Star Wars Holiday Special. Those are not canon at all. Even back then, because anything that George Lucas made, which was the original trilogy, prequel trilogy, and 2008 Clone Wars show, those 6 films and that show are canon, because that's what George Lucas made. But now with Disney Star Wars, anything and everything is canon, including the shows, video games, comics, anything that Lucasfilm made that is made is canon. Now there's a few exceptions, but they have to say it if it's not canon. Like with Star Wars Visions that came out last year, that is not canon, but they had to say it because everything's assumed that it is. With old Lucasfilm, the games and the comics were not canon, which meant that the games and comics could be whatever they wanted to be. They didn't have to follow the timeline of the films, which made games very cool to play. Like you had the Revenge of the Sith game where you had an alternate ending. I didn't play the game back in the day, but it's cool to have that option. You don't get that now in modern games that Lucasfilm makes because it has to be canon. Everything has to be canon. There is no different paths to choose because it's basically like a canon story. It's like a show basically, which limits what it is. Now, I'm not saying it's bad. I like the Star Wars games that came out under Disney, but they're very strict. Same with like comics. You know, comics you read it and you're like, oh my god, they're so bizarre and crazy, so cool. But when you read it now, it's like it seems like such a lore fest. So much lore and like connections to the films, and sometimes it's unnecessary. And that's one with the comics. The video games don't really deal with that. But in terms of the comics, it's like I look at videos talking about it, and like this, I cannot see this in a film or show. Like this does not work. But it works in a comic book. Like how can this work in the Star Wars universe? You have all this crazy stuff. You have frickin' Darth Vader riding this giant, like giant squid type of creature, and it's like, what the hell is this? Why? This does not make sense. But if it was not canon, then it would be fine. It's like, oh, it's just a cool story, but nope, it's part of the canon. Darth Vader rode this giant-looking squid in space, or whatever, and has canon now. I feel like the last thing to compare is how each era, like, makes continuity work. Because old Lucasfilm, they handled the continuity well, and they did have a kind of helping hand, because since there was less content, and only stuff that George Lucas made was canon, continuity's sake did not necessarily apply now when it came to, because there was the original trilogy, and then the prequel trilogy, there was a giant gap in between the 2 trilogies, so everything was based off of the films itself. There was nothing extra. It's not like Marvel where you have to watch like 2 films in order to get what's happening in this film. It's not necessarily like that, really. It's not really like that in Marvel either. Let me give you an example of like, you have to watch this in order to understand that part of the film. You don't have to do that with Star Wars. And everything's kind of fitting nicely, but when it goes to Disney Star Wars, I feel like it's more apparent now. Like, you have to watch this in order to get that. Why did it happen? Oh, watch this show. And it's like, if executed right, that's not a problem, but sometimes it is a problem. Because these shows are being made all at the same time, you know? And some of the directors, some of the writers are like, oh, we're just going to explain it in the show. But some of them are going to not. As time moves on with all these Disney Plus shows, it's going to be a point where everything's going to be convoluted. And this time period in between episode 6 and 7, this 30-year gap, is going to be so filled up that there's going to be some convolutedness. There's going to be some overlappingness of continuity that is just not there. I mean, it already is happening with some stuff, but it's very minor. Like, very, very, very minor stuff. Just like the books and comic books that don't necessarily line up, but they're minor. You can't really notice. So I feel it's now for me to explain what is my favorite era of Star Wars. Is it old Lucasfilm or Disney Star Wars? Which one do I like more? And honestly, I like the old Lucasfilm better because it's a lot less content. It was easier to digest, and you don't need to spend money on a third-party system to watch the content. You can just watch it, enjoy it, and there's less of it. Continuity-wise, it's better. And I feel like the way Star Wars was handled back in the day was better than it is handled now. But that's not to say I do like the content. You know, it is good, but I feel like it's gonna get to a point where it's more gonna be like factory made. That's what it's gonna feel like. Like every couple months, a new Star Wars show comes out, and so it's being a new hot thing, then hype for the next thing. That's basically the cycle that's happening. It's never gonna end. I'm gonna be dead in like 80, 85 years, 90, whatever. I'm gonna die in many, many decades, and Star Wars is still gonna be going on Disney Plus with all these shows, and it's gonna be like, what the hell? Like, I feel like it's gonna get to a point where it's Disney, they're gonna milk it to the brim. You think Rockstar's gonna milk GTA 5? Oh, Disney's milking Star Wars to the bone. The cow's gonna be dead. The cow's gonna be a skeleton. Hell, it's just gonna be nothing there. It's gonna be milking nothing at that point. But what do you guys think? Do you like old Lucasfilm or do you like Disney Star Wars? Comment down below. And I'm gonna go now, so goodbye everyone.